Greeting, friends, crew member of our beloved, unique, and polluted spacecraft. Whatever you may be on the other side of the monitor, you know that if I am not standing, it is because I have an important guest. And when I mention that this is an important guest, it is because we're going to speak about a very important topic, not only about the current events, but also about the problems of today. We have Daniel Quintero, our producer of radio, as well as a photographer. He has a title in research investigation, as well as award of the Aníbal Nassau program for Conexión Cúcuta, a documentary. Aníbal Nassau, I remember this. We were part of the Puente Negro, Puente Escondido. Also nominated to the Caribbean Award of the movies with A Hidden Truth. He's the author of audiovisual works as Nicolás Maduro president, Between Turmoil, What's Happening in Venezuela, War Without Limits, Venezuela Go, and he has been awarded with different prizes by different civilian and military organizations of Venezuela. With no further ado, I would like to speak about certain things so that we can start speaking about, we can say that is the hierarchy of the topics. Can we talk about the smuggling of destruction of strategic materials to the neighbor country of Colombia? Greetings, Professor and watchers. It's a pleasure for me being here in one of the main shows for political communication, international communication. For me, it is an honor being here today and representing also my co-workers. We are a team. Well, and indeed it is Colombia, the great Colombia, Colombia from Bolivar, from Miranda, Colombia. Also the one that Chavez loved, that Commander Chavez even encouraged with different types of agreements of gas pipelines and oil, as well as selling fuel to the border zone, particularly on the north area of Santander, with very low prices, lower than the prices than the price of fuel in Colombia. In Venezuela, we have the cheapest gas on earth, and in Colombia, we have the second most expensive one, and President Chavez created an agreement where we sold fuel to the north of Santander with lower prices, even 50% of the amount of what it costs in the Republic of Colombia. Colombia has not been so generous as President Chavez was for 12 years of his government, and now with Nicolás Maduro in the last years as president, Colombia has not been generous either, because what Colombia has exported to Venezuela has been paramilitaries, mobs, as well as structures, not only for smuggling strategic and energy material, but also have allowed the war without borders against Venezuela, a diplomatic war, the financial war, of course, a war of resources, a war of sanctions even that have been applied against Venezuela during the last few years, and Colombia has been a part of this. Colombia does not only have 8 military or 9 military bases granted to the United States. Let us remember that this was something that was encouraged and promoted by President Álvaro Uribe Vélez, Dr. Varito. Dear doctor, he was loved by drug traffickers, right? He had the number 2 officer of the Air Force. He was number 1. He was number 1. He swore, and then he allowed the drug traffickers to have their own airports, specifically Pablo Escobar Gaviria, his strategic partner. The former President Uribe's father, well, He's a former president, was linked to the family of Pablo Escobar and everything related to this, to the Medellin cartel. What was the name? The name of the farm, it was called the Nápoles, the Naples, and it had an airplane in the gateway. It was the first that he used to take drugs. I was there 4 years ago for the first time visiting there. I visited the hacienda previously, but 4.5 years ago I was there, and there's still a small aircraft there, the one that was the first by which they used cocaine. Yes, it was a very small aircraft that they used for this. So there's a hacienda that is still somehow operational as a zoo. Today the government of Colombia exploits this as a tourist attraction for people to visit it, to see the animals, the giraffes, the zebras, the hippopotamus, the vehicles, the samurai Toyotas that were used by Pablo Escobar and other luxury vehicles that Pablo Escobar used in his day. That is still there, and it is part of the culture of Colombia. In Colombia, there's 6 different social structures divided just like livestock, and there's an additional one which could be part of the 6th tier, which is being a drug trafficker or part of a mob. And there's a culture of theft that has been implemented since the 70s, 80s, and 90s in Colombia. Without Uribe, without Dr. Barito, we would not be using drugs, we would be smuggling in tires, but he decided to use a new identity for this. Yes, it was reflected in the book called Loving Pablo, Hating Escobar, that's the name, and he was the one who provided all the concessions to Pablo Escobar Gaviria with all the permits. The one controlling the civilian aircraft in Colombia was him, and they used planes to transport cocaine to the Caribbean, to Central America, and of course to the United States too. And specifically there, the Medellin cartel started growing, and Pablo Escobar became the most important character for the drugs in the whole continent and also in the whole world, all due to Uribe. It was exponential and worldwide. Yes, due to Álvaro Uribe, who was also part of the most wanted of the DA for collaborating with drug trafficking. Now the status has changed when he became a presidential candidate and he was supported to be a president. Even Salvatore Mancuso, who was extradited by Colombia to the United States, he was a paramilitary manager, he was a drug trafficker as well, and he declared that he contributed with the campaign of former President Uribe for him to become president of Colombia. So, for 8 years, there was a president who had a drug presidency, a drug government that was for 8 years in office and strengthened all the mobs that bring all the strategic material of Venezuela: gold, copper, coltan, as well as hydrocarbons, oil, one of the best oils in the world, because as they call it here, this is called an eco type of fuel. The Colombian fuel is one of the worst and most expensive fuels on earth. It evaporates and consumes very, very fast. Venezuela has a premium fuel. 95 is one of the best types of fuels in the world. It has components of certain vegetables as ethanol. So there's a mafia in the border with over 2,000 kilometers of border with Colombia that has been fostered by President Álvaro Uribe, who allowed the creation of 2,000 exchange houses. Yes, over 2,000 exchange places that can move money. So this is a great place for money laundering. Yes, of course. It is a huge machinery for working with money, and they use the notes from Venezuela. What's happening there? They bring all the notes from Venezuela. Yes, we saw the notes. I did not do a lot. No, there were like huge warehouses. And what's the goal of this? Well, these warehouses filled with paper money we can state that Colombia is the first producer of cocaine. Its GDP works with cocaine. Colombia is also an agricultural country. It produces other things, of course. It is a country that also, other than all this culture related to theft, to mobs, there's also certain productive sectors. We cannot deny this, but Colombia has a drug oligarchy that has been in office for the last few years, and cocaine has worked as a lubricant for their economy. So they need to have a big laundromat in order to legitimize all these capitals in pesos and also in other types of money like dollars. So they need to use the bolivar. And the paper money is strictly necessary for them to pay for cocaine, to pay for gas, the one that goes through the border, and to pay for gold, because the money also has a basis on gold. Colombia exports copper, but they do not produce copper. This is pathetic. This is pathetic. So we're facing this situation where they distort all our economy by fixing a rate that's not the real one due to Bolivar, because they're laundering the money of great capitals of the mafia. And in 2017, we're able to access a document of Congressman Ivan Cepeda. He said that in the north of Santander, there were around 7,000 and $10,000 million yearly for illicit activities from the trafficking coming from Venezuela. Well, they can buy some politicians with this, right? Yes, of course. Not only politicians, but people from the force and military officers, as well as on the other side. In Cartagena, and the facade of the ocean that Colombia has, which uses, let us remember that trafficking also happens via sea, not only in the land and the air. We have Santa Marta, Buenaventura in the Pacific. The Santa Marta port is one of the most important ones in this side of the continent. It is just as important as La Guaira and Puerto Cabello. I'm not theorizing this. I have sailed in these ports, and you must see what happens there. Yes, they have a lot of movement. In the last report about drugs of the United Nations of 2017, they stated that the amount of cocaine seized is not the amount that is moved. Of course, the same thing happens with marijuana, because 600 million containers are moved yearly in the world, and only a 2% of this amount is audited of all this trade. Thus, here we have politicians that have been bought off in Colombia, as well as people from the army of Colombia. We'll not say that they all are part of this, but of course they've been able to reach this. If drug trafficking reached the power, if the militia reached the power with Álvaro Uribe, let us remember that he is one of the most important parts of this, which then became the self-defense that was united in Colombia. Now the self-defense that come from Gaitán, robbing the social name of Jorge Lester Gaitán. This is the sacrilege. He was killed by the CIA, by intel agencies of the United States. So we have a whole military and political and espionage apparatus in Colombia that only has 5 years left of energy, and Colombia must supply with drugs for the greatest consumer of drugs in the world, which is the United States. If you cut it, they go crazy, right? Some millions due to the withdrawal syndrome. Of course, it is completely necessary for them. So they will not cease the role of stopping the government of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, the current one, or any other government that is not useful for their interests. They tried to do this with President Chavez, but then they tried to do this silently. They had a peace sort of treaty, but they were trying to work below in the government of Álvaro Uribe, Juan Manuel Santos as defense minister, together with Álvaro Uribe Vélez bombed They bombed Ecuador. They bombed Ecuador. So these are the types of practices that this government had carried out before. And the creation of these over 2,000 houses for exchange and the creation of these financial systems for legitimizing even those who transport fuel from Venezuela to Colombia, because it can be legitimized by a legal figure which is called the Pimpineros cooperation. So if I come here and I am in Colombia with a container full of fuel, when I have 30,000 liters of gas, I can legalize it with this legal figure that was created in Colombia. So we are providing this. So that's a mafia. Pimpineros, please explain this. Pimpina is this type of container holds 10, 12, 20 liters, up to 6 gallons of fuel that goes through the border. So this is a type of micro-trafficking. They're trying to get this gas in Venezuela, gas of 91 octane, that's only 1 Bolivar in price. The one of 95 octanes, the premium one, mixed with ethanol, costs 6 bolivars a liter, and in the border they pay up to 300,000 bolivars per liter. So someone can sell 10 liters of gasoline that he could have paid for 10 bolivars, and they can receive on the other side of the border 3 million bolivars immediately. So it has become a very profitable way of even turning the wheel of many people who live in the Venezuelan side are having a society of accomplices because they look for a way to get money, as it happens in Colombia, where there is this type of society that does this. And what is Venezuela doing? What's the reaction? Can we notice something? Because there are sources that I cannot quote, but there are operations that are in full development, right? Yes, of course. Here, the role of the Strategic Operational Command with Commander Remigio Ceballos Dichazo, who has been there in front of all these operations, the strategic regions for comprehensive defense in line with the border with Colombia, over 2,000 kilometers of border, and Minister Padrino and other servants, as well as generals, Amirants, who have been there, and they've been with the nationalist message to contain, to hold, with the blocking lines, with the normalization lines, in order to stop this type of trafficking. The amount of notes of paper money that have been gathered in the last few months have never seen before. We do not have any previous record in the history of the Republic of Venezuela where this much paper money had been gathered, so many strategic materials, so much fuel as it has happened in the last 3 years. This has been incredible, as well as the maritime facade. We have a great maritime facade. We have fishery, which is very appealing, that is also paid with dollars. We have diesel, and diesel, it's extremely, well, I guess that it is the cheapest in Venezuela. The liter of diesel costs below 1 bolivar. You can fill whatever you want, and you go to those areas and they will give you a full truckload of notes. With 100,000 bolivars, you can fill a huge tank. And the same thing can happen in the sea. So yeah, there's also sea trafficking that we have fought against. We've seen these. Also trafficking of cocoa, because it is paid with dollars. Cocoa that comes from the northern coastal zone of the Miranda state. And Sucre as well. That's the best cocoa of the world, one of the best in the world. It is the best cocoa of the world. Well, due to the great cocoa products that we have in history, the owners of that farm. Yes, we have the best coffee on earth as well, which is also trafficked towards Colombia to then package it as Juan Valdez with that brand. This is unbelievable. Juan Valdez is like the Juan Bimba in Venezuela. And they decide to say so and present it as if it's theirs, with the name, with the brand Juan Valdez. The producers of Bocono have told us this. We've heard this on first hand that people buy the production of coffee in Trujillo, they bring it to Colombia, and they package it as Juan Valdez with that brand. The same thing happens with cocoa, with fish. Fish is also being taken and trafficked. So it's not only strategic materials, it's not only gold, which is also being stolen. And some days ago, the armed forces provided a very important hit to a gold mine. Just to have an idea, a big gold mine in the state of Carabobo. In Carabobo, yes, half hour away from Valencia. And specifically in the area of Tocuyito, there was an operation called CEOFAM. CEOFAM was in front of this, and we had the chance to see this. CEO is the Strategic Operational Command of Venezuela, and they had huge pieces of land that are very similar to the mines in places as the state of Bolivar. And just like the one in Carabobo, there are others in the Portuguesa state and in Cogede state, and others in Maracaibo, where great amounts of gold were being extracted. So miners told us personally that they were bringing up to 1 gram of gold per day, 1 gram per day. And that day, there was around 1,000 people working with mines. And who controls the mines? Well, the militia of Colombia. What's the specialty of the Gulf Clan, the self-defense of Gaitan in Colombia, also called Rastrojos, or Urabeños, or Gaitanistas. They're using this name, or also the Clan of the Gulf. This is the big drug trafficking organization, and mining is also being exploited in Colombia. So we also have these groups on our spaces in Bolivar. The same thing happening in Carabobo, in Cojedes, in Portuguesa, and in the Zulia state. So the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela is the only country of the world our beloved, polluted, and unique spacecraft. We didn't have any other place to go. It is the country that has the highest volume of illegal extraction of strategic reserves of minerals, of the population itself, because there are many young people that, due to the communication war, have been sold the idea that Venezuela is facing one of the worst circumstances, that we're facing conditions against most people, conditions that are better in different countries, and that this workforce that is highly trained can be taken away. If you want to become a doctor, it is completely free in Venezuela. If you want to be a medical doctor, you can do it for free in Venezuela. The same thing with engineering. But if you do so in Colombia, just for a semester, you have to pay $3,500. Just for a single semester, $3,500. It is the most expensive career. The second one is political sciences and law studies, which is around $2,500, $3,000 per semester. This is just for you to understand what is happening. They're stealing our intelligence due to a communication war and propaganda against our country to the youth, so they can steal this strategic material. It's not only gold, it's not only gas, it is the medicine, it is also what it is imported from Venezuela, where healthcare is completely free, in order to be taken towards Colombia and other countries too in the Caribbean. In the case of gold, the one that's been extracted from Carabobo, there are suspicions that it reached the Dutch countries of Aruba and Curacao, but it also was then shipped to Europe, particularly to the Netherlands, so the Antilles, and then directly to the Netherlands in Europe. So can you see what happens? But there's no political will in Colombia to stop this, right? No, they haven't shown any political will for this. Venezuela invests a lot of money in technology, in blocking lines, in normalizing lines, regulation lines, with hundreds, thousands of people working night and day taking care of our border, taking care of our roadways, while Colombia does not do this. That's why they're able to buy politicians and also to threaten. It's not only sometimes money, but there's also life at stake. So you either receive money or you're killed. That's what happens in Colombia. Either or. So in the other side of the border, of course, should they have the same investment as we have here in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela, then of course they would not have this circumstance happening. So instead of having 8 or 9 military bases from the United States, specifically for the civilian in order to work with productions, with the movies, and to create propaganda in the media instead of storing weaponry and logistical personnel for weapons, then if they had done so in these areas of the border, the circumstances will be different. They do not care about anything of Venezuela, anything beyond the resources. Well, it's a wound that has never been closed in Cuba, and that's the Guantanamo base. We were about to face a nuclear problem back then when they decided to have a strategic weaponry there. Those of us who knew and understood what happened there will never forget those days. But a single base already speaks about this, that these people directly dropped their trousers with 9 bases and allowed to have sovereignty over earth, land, and sea. This is a catastrophic case. For instance, let's say that one of these officers of any range in the United States who, as it has been done many times before in Japan, in Korea, where they got drunk as well as got dragged and started raping women. Yes, if they do so, this is the worst case scenario. If the daughter of the president is raped, then they have to stop and don't do anything. Yes, there's immunity given to them, and no one, a Marine within the agreements, can be completely free of any situation happening, just like an ambassador, with full immunity, with military immunity. We could use this term maybe. I met a gentleman. He was called Luis Carlos Galan. It was the last time when I had lunch with him, I spoke with him with the diplomatic presentation of his country, and we had really good chemistry, and we spoke, and he said, I'm all in. I will do everything to clean my country. And he told me, if I don't do this, this is my business card, this is my private number. I am all in, and I said, God bless you. And the Virgin too. But you know what this could cost you, right? But there was no way to stop him. There was no way to buy him. He was a fair man, and I remember the pictures with all the security measures, but he was killed with weapons, with heavy weapons, and it was brutal, and it changed the history of the country. Yes, Colombia has seen many presidential candidates being killed. One of the most important ones, Jorge Eliezer Gaitán, of course, just before the summit for the creation of the Organization of American States and the Bogotazo. No one learned anything from the Bogotazo, right? Yes, of course. Thousands of people were killed by the public force. So Colombia is governed by the Liberal Party and the Conservative Party. So parties that have over 1 century. So it seems like colonialism is still governed in this. We can see what's happening, something that's never ending. It has been never able to overcome Venezuela because we did not do so. We worked our own ways. They continue with this model. So they continue with this group of politicians that started working in Bogota, where they've killed not only presidential candidates as well as congressmen and social leaders, who today we can see very concerned as the Gulf Clan, which is one of the drug trafficking organizations more important in the whole world. With not a lot of propaganda, with not a lot of noise behind it, that operates basically silently. Because in Colombia, people don't speak about this drug trafficking organization, about this militia organization. There is very little for all the crimes that they are committing on displaced people, on murders, and today also with the leaders of the FARC that are starting working with public activities, social leaders. So they've been able to do so, and they have killed one after the other, right? Yes, and also deceiving people in order to create a lobby. It was a lobby for the public opinion with a free trade agreement that was a bilateral agreement with Colombia from 2007-2008 with the of the Plan Colombia that add up to $3 billion a year and keep using this money. And this military force and this militia, which is part of the United Self-Defense of Colombia, where President Álvaro Uribe is very closely related, and his brother Santiago Uribe Vélez was just freed from jail for 2 years. He was 2 years in jail due to working with the militia for killing social leaders linked with the group called Los Doce del Patíbulo. No, it was called the 12 Apostles. The 12 Apostles. Sorry about them. The 12 Apostles. He was linked to this. So he was in jail for 2 years. The brother of the president, Álvaro Uribe Vélez. His brother, Santiago Uribe Vélez, was in jail for working with the militia for 2 years, linked with a criminal organization called Los Doce Apóstoles, the 12 Apostles. This happened in the Antioquia department. Please tell me a little bit about this. This seems like a cooperation, right? Yes, they were coexisting. Yes, they created this name, and Convivir was the name of militia groups that were trying to hunt social leaders within the communities of the Antioquia department. And those were forces that work beyond the police, and there are pictures of Convivir with the leaders of the so-called Convivir. We're pinpointing where each one of the social leaders was there inside neighborhoods of the Antioquia department, as well as in the city of Medellin. And they were hooded with boots, wearing a uniform, and they were showing where the different criminals were there. They were social leaders that were being killed, and President Álvaro Uribe is strictly linked to the murders that took place in that year with the Convivir in Antioquia. Let us remember that he was the governor of Antioquia, and he has a very close link to the Medellin cartel when it was led by Pablo Escobar Gaviria. So this is not happenstance. Everything that has happened in Colombia in the last years has been in order to break and to infiltrate and penetrate Venezuela and to have all the services, as they have already dropped their trousers, as you said, with 9 military bases. Well, they want to do so with Venezuela in order to take all the resources, all the energy. We know that Venezuela is the country that has the greatest amount. Well, it has been blessed by God, but God said, I gave you too much, so I will bring you some neighbors that will make your life hard. We have images of the mines of Valencia. Director, do you have images of this? Yes, here we have. Well, that is part of the mines of the exploitation of gold in Valencia, in Carabobo. Carabobo, who started with the independence of Venezuela. Yes, just 2.5 hours from Caracas. These are gold mines, So when we say that we are sitting, some of them are standing up, we're over a huge rock of gold. This is real. This is a fact. This just happened some days ago, where in this operation, the Armand Jose Remigio Chazo was there, as well as Giuseppe Lesandrello, who's the commander of the region of comprehensive defense, and was in front of this. And you can see that we do not have this people linked to the mafia. If we had high military commands related to the mafia, operations like this would have never been possible. This is extraction of gold, just half an hour away from Valencia, and of course destroying nature, of course destroying nature as well. Getting all this material without any taxes, without any money going to the Republic, and only feeding the mafia, because the mafia is the one setting the prices for gold. We were there. We were on foot. We were visiting the mines, and I was there. It is incredible indeed. I thought that it only happened in the south of Venezuela, in the deep south, right? In the deep south, near Brazil. This is just next to us. This happened in Carabobo, also in Portuguesa, and it also happened in Cojedes, where similar mines to these were found, where the militia groups, as well as the mobs and armed people, were those who set the prices for this. So if they got a gram of gold, they decided the price that they wanted to pay for it. But at the end of the day, there were slaves working there, because that's why they also brought cash, in order to pay these people in cash. That's why we have the problem with the paper money in Venezuela. The gold mines here in the central part of the country, the gold mines in the south, as well as all the apparatus that Colombia has allowed to happen, because they don't care about anything. They don't care what's happening with our paper money, with our currency. They don't care about this. They don't care. So they just allow this to happen. And of course, they have a civil population, which is the target of this operation for financial wars, for never-ending wars, for limitless war. Well, there could be problems, because this is not a secret. It is very difficult, or it used to be very difficult, to access paper money, and what you could get, the daily amount from an ATM, was not enough to even buy maybe some juice box or maybe 1 kilogram of beef. It was not enough, the money you could be able to withdraw from an ATM, because most of the cash was taken, which is completely necessary for these mafias to work with their capitals, to launder their capitals. So this is basically the detergent for the laundering of their great mobs, not only in the north of Santander, but also in Venezuela. But there's a great combat provided by the authorities with the order of the President of the Republic. So it's been a straight order to fight against all these bad things generated by the neighboring country of Colombia. So Maduro will win the elections? What's the scenario? Well, what would be the consequence? What would happen? As we said, Colombia has 4 years and 9 months left of oil. Why are you speaking about this time? 4 years and 9 months. After that, they will not have their own energy? No, they do not have oil. They do not have their own energy. They will depend particularly and specifically and only of the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. That's why they're exploiting or trying to look oil by the fracking, the so-called fracking, which has terrible consequences. Yes, fracking, according to the last report. Well, at least in the north, they learned about this, and they learned this the bad way, right? Yes, and the Secretary and the Council of Defense that today has Major Pascualino Yolillo, who is no longer related to foreign powers. I remember that in Miraflores, a decision was made when Chavez arrived, which is, if you were part of the most important and sensitive area of Ministry of Defense, there was an officer of the people from the United States that controlled who came in and who came out with their smoke glasses. Yes, yes. They had even a plate in the Ministry of Defense, CIA, and a delegation with the military delegation or the attaches from the military that was not in Vallarriba, where they have a big military base because it does not seem, well, this is from a personal point of view, where they do not have an embassy, they don't have a typical embassy with the features that they usually have. It is the biggest embassy of any country in Venezuela, and it is located in the strategic mountain that allows to oversee the whole city of Caracas. So there's a free horizon. You can see these directly with all the electronic apparatus, and not even to speak about what they had near there. So they have the office of the ambassador as well as the station called by the CIA, which is controlled. Yes, these are the branches of the CIA, and I believe that they have a heliport for a quick evacuation. Yes, of course, of course. So all of this here in Venezuela, they all play a very important role. We've taken people of the headquarters of the Ministry of Defense. We've expelled the military people that had nothing to do and are not linked to the School of the Americas and the training of the high officers of our force. They have the possibility of being nourished academically from other countries and from other armies. Yes, and they open the way for different doctrines. Yes, of course, there's Venezuelan officers who love the nation and who also live in Russia, Belarus, in Cuba, and Brazil. So they've opened their possibilities. So there's not a single doctrine. So if Maduro wins the election, well, this is a very likely scenario. So this will happen. This will happen. Yes, all the numbers that we have. Well, what will happen with the oligarchy of Colombia? Ivan Duque, who's representative of Uribe, is coming to popular sectors of Venezuela for a political campaign. This is what's happening. They come to Venezuela to see how is Venezuela doing in order to have a campaign in Colombia. Petro has a different way of thinking. Of course, President Nicolás Maduro has been able to communicate politically that Venezuela is part of a state, of a nation that is the target of a great world power because of what it represents geopolitically, geostrategically to these powers, and of course to the countries of the region, in order to absorb and use all of our resources. What happened if things would change in the election in Colombia? I think the oligarchy in Colombia will, of course, will not see anything good happening for it. I think that the mobs, because Gustavo Petro has the intention of making of these mobs. There's over 1,000 exchange houses in the border, so there's 2,000 vessels that take our blood, right? Yes, of course. So this is legalized by President Pastrana in year 2000 via decree. Then it was strengthened by President Álvaro Uribe, and then ratified, of course, by Juan Manuel Santos, who in 2012 started with an assessment of the Bolivar in the border, but the extraction of products has continued during the last decade. You know, let me ask you, there's even geopolitics in the Middle East. What's the influence of Israel in the training and what's happening in the other side of the border in Colombia? Do you have any information about this? Yes, evidently, Israel is part. Colombia has a reason why it is called the Israel of South America, because it is linked to intel services of Israel. They use materials, there's weaponry from Israel, there's vehicles from Israel too, as well as vehicles from the United States. Colombia has Black Hawks and also weaponry manufactured in America, and elite groups are trained in Israel as well as the United States, so the special forces have this type of training. We are not, well, we do not have a problem just because Hugo Chavez did everything in his hands, everything in his hands. Even Nicolás Maduro has spoken about this. Off camera, in private, President Uribe said that he was part of the Chavez movement. This is unbelievable. He said that he was part of Chavez movement. So this happened when Santos had been president, but they don't follow the line. The line is shown by the United States, by Israel. So it is a whole group of companies in the United States and Israel that create a lobby with these holding companies that take place in Colombia with the treaty. Over 200 with the free trade agreement of Colombia with the United States. It's over a decade old. You know, I had the chance in the former republic, as I was in charge of covering the United Nations, I was linked with the United States Embassy, and there was a very important aggregate who said, "You are criticizing us, but you play clean." Here, this is an invitation for a contest, which is for the area managers. But if we give this to you, you can take advantage of this. And this took place in the Fletcher School of the Kennedys. That's their pride and joy. This is the Fletcher School. And this was a curse. And there's an oil lobby of the University of Texas by which they blackmail everyone. And there's a lobby with the business with Southeast of Asia. And we went throughout the whole of the United States. And after this, I was upset, but I became part of this because I asked the question that the rest of people thought but never asked. And when the training concluded, all the important lobbies about oil, about agriculture, about the heavy industries were part of the pensum, but the one for the technology apparatus and the pro-Israel lobbies were not there, and they are the most active part of the foreign policies of the United States. Yes, of course, the part of the military, the technology, and the industry. We, at least, just for us to have an idea, one of the most important lobbies, or one of the characters that are lobbying in the companies that recover raw materials, metals, and that also create appliances, have a very important position in diplomacy of the United States. It's Nikki Haley. And Nikki Haley is ambassador of the United States for the United Nations. And Nikki Haley was the governor of South Carolina. Nikki Haley is a co-founder, manager of Hire in the United States. Please explain this. Hire is a manufacturing company for appliances. Well, it manufactures, yes. And Venezuela is building the biggest plant of the continent for appliances. So it's not happenstance that whenever Donald Trump appears and states that Venezuela does not discard a military operation, and then Nikki Haley is next to him representing the lobbies. Her parents recover raw materials, they work with this, plus she's also part of North American Association of Rifles. So, untouchable organization of rifles, yes, the Rifle Association. So, nothing less and nothing more. And the right to bear weapons of everyone, yes. So here, within the administration of President Donald Trump, there are certain elements that see Venezuela. We have the energy lobby, we have the lobby for manufacturing of appliances, also raw materials, metals, that they are all watching. They want to appropriate over Venezuela. So it would be naive for us to believe that they have no interest of applying whatever they require in order to go against Maduro, but against the whole coalition that supports him. That's why they've been working for this. That's why in Colombia, the Commander series was created, as well as the series for the drug trafficking have been created. And who was the manager of the Southern Command just months ago? That was John Kelly, who was a general who was an expert in arts, in cinematography, and he is the minister of the presidency. He is the one sitting next to Donald Trump, telling him what are the strategies to be followed against Venezuela. So there is a lobby, there's an apparatus of military, of energy, and of technology surrounding President Donald Trump to make these decisions against Venezuela. And a phrase that has been under the table, but I've tried to highlight this ever since I heard this. Whenever Washington speaks about a clear and present danger, this is not just a phrase. This is a legal framework for a military action. A clear and present danger expresses that there is a condition to be harmed. Thus, we have the possibility of declaring a war. And this is against us, of course. And the Colombian brothers, what are they going to do? They will just see from afar. Yes, we have the whole lobby against us. Remember that President Kennedy had a similar situation in the missile crisis. His priority was to create a diplomacy to solve this conflict, yes, to solve the nuclear problem. But it did not happen with General Cortés Lemay. Yes. So this all was representative for the military lobby that was pushing in order to have a military conflict, where the U-2 planes were flying with no permits of the president, not allowed by the president, also with different planes in order to fly and take pictures of the facilities that were being built back then by the Soviet Union, sovereignly with the government of Cuba. They flew over the president, even with the military maneuver. It was called the Orsak maneuver. If you put it outside, it's the Castro operation. And this all was done on the back of the president. And they finally, and they never imagined that a U-2 plane was going to be bombed, and the pilot shouted, right? And Anderson, pilot, died in this operation in an espionage activity. Sadly, President Kennedy was there as well. But it was the military apparatus that was pushing for all this craziness, and the Canadian Catholic millionaires were not controlled by the lobby, so they just started shooting. Yes, so Colt was not able to fight against the Kennedys, and when the charismatic blood leader said, "I have a dream," then again killed by a sniper. So the American Rifle Association is fully untouchable. Yeah, the same thing is happening in Colombia. Whenever there is someone working like Martin Luther King, like Malcolm X, like Kennedy, with all differences we may have on his way of acting with politics, whenever Robert Kennedy, brother of the murdered president, John F. Kennedy, stated that the lobby of toys was investing a great amount of money to reach our children by cutting down trees to sell things to our children that don't need things. This was already a way of speaking. You are speaking about the money of many people, and what we have said today speaks about the interests of many. And from time to time, in these heads, in these mobs, the prioritization is the money, The activity and development of the human is not there. We're out of time. I think that even we are over. I apologize, Director, but these things had to be said. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you here, and you are always invited to be part of this category. You are always a guest here because someone must say this and not the truths that we listen with the transnational companies of information. Thank you very much to you for teaching us for such a long time how to do real journalism. Well, it comes with a cost. It comes with a cost. And I take the risk with full awareness because this is my duty. Whatever you may be in the other side of the monitor, thank you very much for allowing us to be there with you. From Studio 3 of Venezuela Televisión, pioneering channel of international television via satellite, inherited from PBN 5 in the Charneca, where I started working a long time ago. Thank you for allowing us for being there with you. Please don't send us messages to Telesur, but if you watch it on Telesur, remember that this is a program from Venezuela Televisión and of myself as a producer and creator. Director, the floor is all yours.